All right there, folks. Welcome to today's conversation. My name is Kendall Jamal Doucette. I'm the mental health and wellness consultant with Guard Me Care Suite Services. And today I'm here to talk to you about tackling loneliness and social isolation, which feels like a very timely and relevant conversation that we are having, especially as the holiday season is coming upon us. So I invite you to um, bring in, a bit of curiosity about what you might be seeing in when it comes to this concept yourself and what you might be needing and for today's conversation. Okay. So to get started today, I'm first going to begin with a territory acknowledgement. So just bear with me for a moment as I read here. So I would like to begin by acknowledging the indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. And while we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land, which I call home. I am situated on the land that is the traditional home of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Mississauga, and Wendat Niawansio peoples. I recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. I also recognize the contributions Indigenous peoples have made in shaping and strengthening this community. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to meet here and ask that you join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we are and can, each in our own way, try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to also improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. So for today's agenda, we're going to be looking at the psychology of loneliness, also exploring how does loneliness affect our mental health. And then we'll also be taking a look at the importance of social connections, followed by strategies that support connection to self and others. So some practical tips that you can take away with you um, to, I guess, engage social connection. And here are just a list of some professional resources. This is a topic that might bring up a lot for folks. So I do invite you to take down this list of numbers here so that you can get the support that you might be needing. And so before we begin today, I would just like to begin with a breathing exercise. So this is actually something, a skill called interoception that we're going to be exploring here. And so what interoception is noticing the sensations within the boundaries of your skin, right? So that might be noticing your heart is beating really quickly, or your shoulders are up near your ears, right? This is the first time you're looking at where your body might be, or it might be just discovering what is the quality of my breath right now, and where is it landing in my body? So is it very tight? In my esophagus, is it staying in that space, or is it a deep belly breathing that we're doing? And so what I invite you to do here is just get yourself comfortable in a comfortable seated position if you're already doing that, or if you feel comfortable laying on the floor, whatever feels comfortable for you. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to place our left hand on our heart. Okay, so we're just bringing some attention to our beating heart here. Right hand on top of our belly button. So as we breathe in through our nose, we can really feel our bellies expanding out. And then on the exhale, feeling our bellies contract here. And so what we're going to do here is about 3 deep collective breaths. Okay, so when you're ready, we'll begin here. So we're going to inhale through our nose nice and deep. And exhale. And another time in here. So nice deep breath into the nose. And exhale. And we're going to do one final breath here. Into the nose. And exhale. So again, we're just bringing some attention to how we're doing and what we might be needing for ourselves to be present here today, right? Connecting with ourselves. A little bit about today. As social creatures, our connections with others are vital to our growth and development. We understand that if we do not have these in place, we can risk stagnation, fear, and a sense of being stuck and unable to relate to another person. We understand loneliness is a common experience that affects everyone, regardless of your age, gender, or background. So it does not discriminate. It is a human experience. And then again, to kind of bring it back to the timeliness and the relevance of this conversation that happened right now, right? We understand this is a very transient month. People are going home, things are shutting down, things are slowing down a bit, right? So that can disrupt our routines and also impact the social opportunities that we have to connect with others. So I invite you today to really have an open stance around what loneliness is and how it might be impacting you in your day-to-day experience, right? Again, we're getting this information so then we can actually create opportunities and pathways to do something to address it if we are experiencing this. The psychology of loneliness. First, we want to define what is loneliness. So many describe loneliness as a state of solitude or being alone. It is actually a state of mind. So it can leave us feeling a bit empty, alone, unwanted. People who are lonely often crave human contact, but their state of mind can make it more difficult to form these connections with other people. The state of mind can lend itself to the creation of a sense that you do not belong, fit in, or that you're truly alone in your experiences. So it's a disconnection from self and others. And something that I really want to highlight here is the importance of belonging, right? This is a human experience. And when we do not feel it and we do not experience it, it is distressing. Loneliness can show up when we're around a lot of people, but feel like we don't quite fit in or belong, right? How many times, I really invite this visualization for folks. How many times, or if this is an experience you're familiar with, how many times you've been around a bunch of people or been in a room full of people but have felt so lonely in that experience, right? Or disconnected. It does not feel good. It can also show up when we lose an important person in our life, like a partner, family member, or close friend. And this can also happen for us within transitions, right? So it's not just the loss through death, but it might be actually relocation and how that actually really impacts us, right? And can stir up experiences of grief. And it also impacts us when we're alone and we really would like to actually be with other people. What's the difference between loneliness, socialization, and solitude? So loneliness is often perceived as an involuntary separation, right? A rejection, abandonment from other people. Social isolation and loneliness are similar. However, social isolation is the lack of social contact and having very few meaningful people to interact with. So it's more looking at the quality, right? Quality and quantity of opportunities. And when it comes to solitude, this is actually something that is voluntary. And solitude is also a necessary component of the human experience, right? We also want to ensure that we're creating space for us to reflect, be in our own zone, if you will, so that we can understand what we need and we can kind of quiet the noise that we might be around often. And so I want to make this point again clear, right? We can be alone and not feel lonely necessary, or we can have contact with people and still experience feelings of isolation. So one thing, something that's important in understanding this experience is that it's also perception, right? How we feel about and make sense of these social interactions that we have with others. This also impacts our experience. It can impact our experience of loneliness. So as you can see here, loneliness can actually stir up a lot of feelings for us. There's fear and sadness, distress, almost like there's something wrong with me, right? What is wrong with me? It can create anxiety, helplessness, and emptiness, right? Feeling like we're abandoned, It's very stirring for us, and it can be a very painful experience for individuals to experience loneliness. It can feel like an aversive state, so I don't want to be in these social experiences or um, these social connections with others because they don't feel good, right? So again, it is all encompassing. It doesn't just impact us um, in terms of our psychology, but it actually impacts our body, how our bodies feel, right? Worry, anxiety, right? That stirs up the stomach. You can feel that in your body. So it really has distressing somatic, so in the body, um, manifestations as well. If we think about this graphic here, this downward spiral of loneliness, it can really begin with our personal circumstances or a precipitating event or both. So, right, again, that perception or the event itself that kind of brought us into an experience that doesn't feel good, which can also create a negative feelings and thoughts for ourselves. And these negative feelings and thoughts can then also influence our behavior, right? So all of these things are connected. How we feel, how we think about something, and how we act. They're all they're all cyclical in their nature. So they all inform one another. So if we feel like we have a negative thought and negative feelings in regards to a certain space or people, that will then inform the behavior. I'm going to actually remove myself, and that could stir up more, I guess, less engagement, so less activity, and more negative thoughts and despair because you are noticing, oh, I'm actually, I feel more alone. I feel disconnected, right? So then again, it creates that distance from that thing, that person, that place that creates these feelings, and that informs and actually conjures up uh, more loneliness without that in that self experience for individuals. The good thing when it comes to addressing loneliness, right? It might be beginning with those thoughts and feelings. How am I perceiving this person, this relationship, right, or this place? And it really highlights here the importance of having not just a lot of so not a lot of connections with others, but deep and quality relationships. The importance of having others that reflect back to you pieces of who you are, right? Those parts of you that they love. This is important for us across the lifespan. So, from womb to tomb. So from when we're born all the way until we die, we need people in our lives who are outside of ourselves, that are safe, mature, and that know how to reflect back to us those beautiful parts of who we are. So if we don't have those sort of experiences, it creates this idea that on the surface, you don't belong, right? Or that there's something wrong with you, which, if we don't have messaging that actively challenges that, we can internalize it as there is something wrong with me. People don't want to be around me, you know. And so loneliness can actually make us anticipate and interpret social situations differently, right? So it kind of almost puts a filter and a lens on how we see the world and how we feel the world sees us. If we think about some ways that our self-concept can be stigmatized, so they can be internalized. So this is when an individual accepts the negative beliefs, views, and feelings toward a stigmatized group in which you might belong to. A perceived stigma, so this is awareness of a negative societal attitude, fear of discrimination, or feelings of shame towards how you might identify. Institutional or structural stigma that arises through the implementation of stigmatizing policy or procedures, so this is structural violence. And also layered and compounded stigma, so where a person holds more than one stigmatized identity. So they have intersecting markers of their identity that says, okay, you know what, I have two identities here that are experienced through oppression. That will also impact how you experience yourself, right? And it might create this idea of I'm not even going to approach people like that or places like this that actually actively reject my uniqueness. And And so it's really important that we get to understand just how these experiences and the need to have quality relationships, uh, how it impacts us. But when we don't have them, and that it can create that potential self stigma, right? How we internalize the way that people experience us, it can really create this idea of what is wrong with me? Why is the world so cruel to people like me, or why are people so distant or adverse to me? And it's really about shifting our perspective and be more curious about what has happened to me and compassionate, right? We're impacted by our experiences. And so if we've had experiences with people, places, and things in which we felt rejected or that they didn't like us, this can really um, create an idea that we shouldn't get close to it, so we don't have to feel the pain or the rejection of that. So how does loneliness affect our mental health? I'm going to read this quote here by Brene Brown, which some of you may be familiar with her work. Current, current neuroscience research shows that the pain and feelings of disconnection and loneliness are often as real as physical pain. And just as healing physical pain requires describing it, talking about it, and sometimes getting professional help, we need to do the same with emotional pain. So this is loneliness is not just a psychological experience, but it also impacts us emotionally. It can feel emotionally painful as well. If you think about psychological factors that impact our experiences with loneliness, so there's, for example, things like I was describing before, one's intersectionality, right? The social identities that you assume. Some people, and especially if these are identities in which they are oppressed by society, pushed out, under resourced, under supported, deemed as wrong. This might be someone who identifies under the 2S LGBTQA plus community, right? And that will impact your willingness to come towards certain experiences and people and places, especially if they're rejecting. So then, that experience becomes a protective measure. I'm not going to get close to someone that's going to reject me. However, that can also become maladaptive, where it becomes a crutch or becomes a lens in which I look at the world through, that is a distortion, because not all people and not all places will be rejecting me. And I also want to be open to exploring that. So if you think about also one's coping styles, um, how connected and I guess relational, right? If you think about one's mental health, someone who might be struggling with their mental health, this can be very difficult for them to just be open to connecting with others, right? Because it might be more distressing to try to do that and try to work through that than to um, be on their own. It's also about social cognition. How do you perceive and make sense of social interactions, right? We think about attributional style. So something that, how this could work out is like, I'm I'm saying something like, I'm lonely because I'm old. So what that does is it represents an internal stable attribution, so over which people can feel that they don't have any control or ability to change. So how we can actually reframe something like that, it might be something, I'm lonely because I've chosen to move to my dream retirement home and I haven't had time yet to meet other people. So that then makes it an external experience and a situation in which can change, right? But when it comes to like psychological factors that impact our experiences with loneliness, it's based on two inquiries here. So it's whether the cause is to do with ourselves or external situations, and whether it is likely stable or variable over time, right? So it's great to understand we are not alone in this experience. Any one of us could be at risk to experiencing loneliness and social isolation. So it's important that we create this awareness, that we're having these conversations like we're doing today, to create a culture of support and address these risks. So some stats here: 13% of people age 15 or older reported always or often feeling lonely. Loneliness has no age restrictions. So like I was mentioning earlier, it does not discriminate. It impacts nearly 23%, so 1 in 4, almost 1 in 4, aged 15 to 24. So if you think about that particular life stage, it is a life stage that is um, it's littered by a lot of biological change for the individual, psychological change, and then also socially, right? This is a time when um, societal, I guess, norms are to come together, form relationships, form loving relationships as one is going to get into their adulthood. It can really challenge these experiences with loneliness and social isolation. Women report higher levels of loneliness than men. So 18% of men aged 15 to 24, 29% of women aged 15 to 24. And what is interesting about this one right here, if we think about socially, right, how uh, how open or what is considered typical or what is normalized in society in terms of expressing these feelings and knowing that it is okay to express these feelings, right? It might be for men, and we know that the way that society might be structured is that for men to be vulnerable and share how they feel, it is almost seen as a weakness. But actually, this is really important that we are talking about this and having these conversations with one another, just so that we can, you know, disrupt the cycle and get the support that we each need. So how do we know if we're at risk here? So we understand that it can be due to unexpected illness of a loved one, separation from friends or family, loss of mobility, worsening physical or mental health, disability or lack of mobility, or access to transportation itself are all potential risks for loneliness and social isolation. We also understand that you may be at greater risk if you live alone, you can't leave your home, you experience financial strain, you have limited social support, you might live in a rural, so like far out, unsafe or hard to reach neighborhood, and this will impact your ability, like opportunities for social engagement, thinking more in person there. You experience language barriers where you reside, right? This can make it difficult to connect in a deep way. You might experience racial, ethnic, sexual orientation, and or gender identity discrimination where you reside. Again, right? That awareness of how I show up in the world, a lot of people don't agree with it, or a lot of people don't like it, or a lot of people might want to cause it harm. So it is actually smart and adaptive to a certain extent to not be in those spaces. So these are different ways that um, you can be impacted in terms of your openness, your willingness, and what is available to you in terms of social opportunities and social engagement with others. It might also be you're not engaged in meaningful activities, so you might be feeling a lack of purpose in what you're doing right now. And I'm really holding the student cohort who might be coming from another country or transitioning, or anyone who's coming from another country and transitioning to a new city, and the difficulty it is to pick up meaningful activities, meaningful connections with others, and re-engage that. I want to read this quote by Brene Brown again. So I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. So if you just take a moment to think about for yourself, I'm gonna um, I'm gonna go ahead, but I'm just gonna invite this moment of reflection. What does connection look and feel like for you? You think about the relationships in your life that you feel like you can give and receive. You don't feel judged by them, so you can really drop down. You don't have to wear a mask. Think about those relationships. And if you don't have them right now, what would those look like for you? It's something to consider. We have to understand that loneliness has an impact on our wellness. So because it is a common human experience, when we lack connection, we can really impact our health and wellness in a negative way. It can lead to experiences with towards obesity, smoking, and high blood pressure. So if you think about things like smoking, this is an object that might be wanting to fill the void of a lack of connection that I don't have. So I might be coping, trying to fill that void with something, to feel something in that moment, even if it's unhealthy, right? We want to have that awareness. And it's because we are social beings, we thrive on healthy connections with self and others. This is what we need, and it's imperative to our growth and development. Social connection can lower our anxiety and depression, help us regulate our emotions and our nervous system, co-regulation, lead to higher self-esteem and empathy, and actually improve our immune system. So it's really important that we're understanding that connection to others, connection to ourselves, and understand what we need to have good quality connections and trying to move towards that. That's going to benefit our health overall. It's important that we also understand what happens to us when we have a lack of connection, right? That actually puts the body under a lot of stress, puts the brain under a lot of stress. So any human that's experiencing social isolation will have a brain that's under constant duress, right? So we're wired for connection. What I want us to also understand here is like this is a deep human connection experience rather that's embedded in our psyche. If you think about uh, back when dinosaurs were around, right? The human that's going to be isolated, or the human that is isolated on its own, often risks their own lives, right? Their lives were at risk because there was no other people to help them fight off the harsh realities of the external world, the physical world that they live in. So what happens with us when our brain is under duress? Our prefrontal cortex gets compromised. So the prefrontal cortex is the place where we can analyze, problem solve, retrieve language, right? So communicate. That becomes compromised when our brain is under too much stress. And what happens is our amygdala, which is the stress alarm system, it is overactive. And what it does, it is constantly scanning the room, the environment for any potential threats, right? And it will even see threats that aren't there. And that might be a neutral face, but it will be read as a potential threat. And when we are in a state of, I guess, threat, we move to defensive maneuvers. So in those spaces, it's just purely about maintaining our safety and not connection. So this is why it's really important we're aware of how are we doing, where are we at, and that exercise that we did in the beginning of the session here, that interoception, understanding those sensations, this helps to inform us of where we're at, right? Are we currently experiencing sensations of fight or flight? So if we're understanding our sensations, right? Fight response might be, okay, I can feel my jaw is tight right now. I'm clenching it. My hands are gripped up like I'm going to throw a punch, right? Flight response, my heartbeat's going really quickly. So again, we're bringing this awareness so that we can understand what do we need right now, where are we at, and how can we ensure that we're in our social connected space, right? Where we're utilizing all parts of the brain, and especially that prefrontal cortex. It's important that we understand social connections and the prevalence of social media, right? Social media is not all bad. It is not all good. There's great aspects to it and its ability to help us stay connected. If we think about the pros here, it allows us to connect to others globally, and for potentially people in the room here that might be uh, from other places in the world, right? This has actually really expanded and allowed us to be connected to others, even if we are not in the same physical space, and that is a great benefit. It also provides us with easy instant communication, so we can tap into our laptop or smartphone and immediately start talking to someone via social media. It also provides us real-time news and information. So if we want to know what's going on locally or globally, we can hop into social media and get information or resources. It also provides general fun and enjoyment for others. So if we think about that, it allows us to be engaged in maybe fun content that we like, certain niche communities that we really enjoy. That allows us to connect to those really minutia parts of ourselves, right? That we like to, I guess, enjoy. It also provides some cons as well here. So it might be information overload and overwhelm. So it can also create this unhealthy attachment where we feel like we're constantly connected or on without moments of downtime or being away from it. And also constant exposure to traumatic events, right? So we're not built to withstand the suffering of others, right? And that can also potentially turn into vicarious trauma, so secondary trauma from witnessing the trauma of others. It also includes social peer pressure and cyberbullying. So for those who might find it difficult to connect with their peers, especially teenagers and young adults, the ability to do something or act a certain way is even more powerful in social media, at school, or elsewhere offline. So it can really impact us negatively in that way. It can also increase feelings of social isolation. We can click a mouse or go on our smartphone and we can see perhaps other curated parts of others' lives that can really create this, you know, me versus other kind of scenario. Look at what they're getting to do. I wish I was there. Wish that that FOMO, that fear of missing out, that comparisonitis. Look how much I'm lacking in comparison to. So it's important that we're understanding how we're navigating our experience with social media, even and the connections that we're trying to use there or connect to. The good thing is that this is it does not have to be a state of mind that we're constantly in. We can actually do things to move ourselves out of it. So it might be starting with awareness of your thoughts and feelings related to loneliness that influence behavior. And from there, we can recognize and that unchallenged negative thoughts and feelings have led to patterns of behaviors that become hard to shift. And knowing that these patterns can be changed, we can challenge negative automatic thoughts and feelings by practicing psychological techniques that help to reframe them. So creating a pause for ourselves. And it might be, like we did earlier today, that introspection, connecting with our breath. Our breath is our natural pause. And we always have it with us. Doesn't matter where we are, who we're with, we will always have our breath. We can also understand that experiencing a shift in these thoughts and feelings and a belief towards positive change is possible. And more positive thoughts and feelings can lead to changes in behavior related to engagement with people or place. And then that might create increased activity engagement, which will reduce loneliness severity, right? So we can do something about it. I think the important message here is that we can be active agents in our health and in our wellness and towards the change that we're wanting to create. It's not going to happen by us passively sitting back. However, we have to engage with it, and it doesn't have to be something we do on our own. Some things that individuals can do. We can understand the power of social connection and the consequences of social disconnection. We understand by learning how vital components, so the way it's structured, the function it plays, and the quality of these relationships can impact our health, the relationships themselves, and our well-being. You want to invest time in nurturing your relationship. So You want to be consistent, frequent, and looking for those high quality engagements with others. You can take time each day to reach out to a friend or family member. One thing about connection is it is active. I appreciate those relationships in which you can pick up with a friend and it's been a long time, and you don't really have to be as active in it. However, the for most relationships, you do have to be an active agent in it, and you're going to change within that relationship. So is that other person, and really creating that space so that you can both safely do that. We want to minimize distraction during the conversation. So if we're with others and we're constantly on our phone, we want to question really how quality is that interaction, and am I, a part of the the pain I might be feeling, the loneliness I might be experiencing because of how I'm interacting with this person when I'm with this person. We also want to actively engage with people from different backgrounds and experiences. This helps us to expand our understanding of and relationships with others, and also given the benefits associated with diverse connections, right? We want to reduce practices that lead to the feelings of disconnection from others. So this includes harmful and excessive social media use, time spent in unhealthy relationships, and disproportionate time in front of screens instead of people. So in that space there, if you are engaged in unhealthy relationships, so unhealthy relationships in the sense of every time I leave this interaction, I feel drained. I feel like it's unbalanced. I feel like there's a lot more given on my end than what they're giving out. Ask yourself why you're participating in that. Why am I participating in my own pain and suffering, and why? Right? Not with judgment, but just curiosity. What am I trying to achieve here? And it might be just to have a quick connection, to feel something, to be around somebody. Some other ways that we can address loneliness here, we want to take inventory. So take inventory and look at the relationships in your life, ones that make you feel good. So healthy relationships are based on authenticity, showing up as your true self, but give and take, and it's about balance. I always come back to that point. If I think about relationship, I think about the ones I can step into and I can just drop down with, and I don't feel judged by this person or these people. I could be myself, and that's accepted. We want to be open to talking with a new friend. So anyone can become a new friend once we spend some time getting to know them. An easy way to find connections in everyday life is by interacting in small ways with acquaintances or people we encounter. Right. So starting small. It doesn't have to be all or nothing or rushing in, even if you might want to, but just allowing that relationship to develop organically. We want to practice self care. When we're feeling lonely, be sure you're doing what you can to take care of yourself in other ways. It's always a good idea, but especially when you're feeling down. Something I think about self care. Yeah, I acknowledge that this might be a time that we're coming into right now with the holiday season coming up. People might be anticipating moments of loneliness or feeling socially isolated. What do you think you can do for yourself? If you can identify, this might be, I know these dates I'm not going to be at work. I have all this time to myself. How do I want to fill that? What would be, caring for myself look like in that space? And coming up with almost like a care plan for yourself so you can be proactive in addressing any sort of space that you might be feeling these things. We want to keep busy, so we want to take time to invest in ourselves and our interests, keep ourselves occupied. Start small and see what we come up with. And we think about what experiences create feelings of joy for me, excitement, allow me to feel creative. You want to ask yourself why you feel lonely. Again, not through that space of judgment, but curiosity and compassion. Do you feel lonely because you don't have others around you? Do you isolate yourself from others? Understanding your situation can help you take action where it matters most. Avoid comparing yourself to others. So that comparisonitis, right? Or that FOMO, fear of missing out. It's easy to look at other people and feel left out. Appearances can be deceiving, right? So if you think about social media, the way that people might curate the best aspects and leave out the parts that they may not want to share, but those are also parts of their experience. We don't want to be fooled by the messages of others. Uh, Social media, like I was saying in particular, can feel like everyone but you is surrounded by friends. I'm going to give yourself some time, especially during big changes and transitions. It's common to feel lonely during transitions like starting a new school, moving to a new city, starting or leaving a job. Whenever you're going through a transition, you can take some time to settle in and find your new place. So loneliness may only be a temporary stop along the way. Think about what else is going on. So how are you feeling in other parts of your life that may add to feelings of loneliness? For example, if you're experiencing mental health problems, depression or social anxiety, this can bring up a lot of difficult thoughts that make it easier to avoid social situations, right? We can get into a self-protective state, but that state could also be something that is a barrier because we over-determine the value of that experience. When it comes to workplaces, we really want to emphasize making social connection as a strategic priority in workplace at all levels for admin, management, and employees as well. We want to train, resource, and empower leaders and managers to promote connection in the workplace. You want to do that through implementing programs that foster connection, assess the program effectiveness, identify any potential barriers to success, and facilitate continuous quality improvement. So it's an ongoing process, right? Addressing these concerns. It's not a destination. This is an ongoing process because different life circumstances can bring you in. Different places where you find yourself can bring this experience in. We also want to create practices in a workplace culture that allows for people to connect with one another as a whole person, so not just the skill sets, what they've been hired to do, the role that they play, but this also allows for us to foster inclusion and belonging, right? We are more than just our work identities. We are more than just ourself as a student identity. So really bringing all that we are into a space. We want to put in place policies that protect workers' ability to nurture the relationships at work. So this includes respecting boundaries between work and non-work time, supporting caregiving responsibilities, and creating a culture of norms and practices that support these policies. We want to consider the opportunities and challenges posed by flexible work hours and arrangements. So this includes remote, hybrid, and in-person work, which also will impact people's ability to connect with others, both within and outside of the work. Evaluate how these policies can be applied equitably across the workforce. When it comes to school or educational departments, we want to provide psychoeducational loneliness. So provide information as to what this experience is, how it shows up, and what can we do to address it. Perhaps this become a class project taken on a collective, right? And what we get to do there is we get to also model and normalize these conversations on difficult topics, such as one we're having today. We want to emphasize playing connection. So it's important that we co-create moments where we can put the work on the shelf, where we prioritize bringing in someone for some fun that focuses on building the social, emotional learning skills while connecting with others. Really building on those relationship skills that we need to not only flourish in a school setting, but across our lifespan, we're interacting with others. We also want to provide peer-to-peer support. So it's common to feel lonely during transitions, like starting a new school or moving to a new city. So what we can learn to do is lean on others who might understand what we're experiencing. So this can look like something like a student-led and educator supported group, where students can come together to share space and connect. And it's also important that we provide educator support. So the reality is, as social beings, we're wired for connection. We are impacted directly and indirectly by the experiences of others. In order for us to be supportive for our students and navigate loneliness, we must also support ourselves and supporting the students, right? So that's truly client work. We're centering the students, but in order to center the students, we also have to center the staff that are supporting the students. So what supports are in place to navigate these conversations? when we think about from a parent or caregiver perspective, we want to be mindful of social media ingestion. What exactly are you taking in and looking at in social media? If you're experiencing negative thoughts and feelings when you're on social media, you might want to take a break or be more intentional around what you do see or follow. So who or what could you follow to feel more connected? You want to use your experience to find or support others. So this might be spending and finding the support of other parents or caregivers who might be experiencing something similar to you could be helpful. You use current experiences or what you might have learned navigating loneliness to shed light on what can be possible for others. This might include something like a gentle parenting group. We want to also be mindful of our recreational leisure lifestyle. So, with much of our emphasis of our responsibility as a parent is providing care for the kids, we might also lose sight of what we find important, in terms of the activities or spaces that we utilize, and the spaces and experiences that we utilize for things like connection, socialization, and intimacy. Think about activities in your life that fill you up and that can bring you more. You can bring more of into your life, and we can also use positive affirmations. So we can actually challenge a deficit-based approach to self. Right? I'm no good. I'm unlovable. I'm a bad parent. To more empowering language that accounts for your strengths. I'm powerful. I'm lovable. I'm an asset to my community. I'm doing the best that I can. Your self concept, so how you experience yourself and also yourself in relation to others, can be negatively impacted by experiencing loneliness and impact your openness to connecting with others. So understand that you can be good to you and you're worth it. We can also, for parents and caregivers, model healthy social connection. This includes constructive conflict resolution, the importance of spending time with others, staying in regular contact with extended family, friends, and neighbors, and setting time aside for socializing away from technology or social media and participating in community events. And we also want to take a look at talking to your children about social connections regularly so you can understand if they are struggling with loneliness or isolation. You can also destigmatize uh, these experiences by having these conversations. We want to look out for potential warning signs of loneliness and social isolation. It might be increased time spent alone, disproportionate online time, limited interactions with friends, or excessive attachment seeking behavior. And if it's needed, to connect youth to helpers like counselors, educators, and healthcare providers if they're struggling with loneliness, isolation, or unhealthy relationships. When it comes to re-engaging social connections and resisting social isolation, we want to be strategic. So we want to think about our interests and skills while thinking about the types of relationships we want. If you prefer talking with others in small groups, look for opportunities to meet people in smaller groups. We want to take it slow. So building confidence is an ongoing process. Give yourself manageable challenges. If you feel very isolated, simply learning to feel comfortable in public spaces like a busy courtyard might be a good first step. Be active and patient. So it takes time to build relationships and it can be a bit scary at first. Try to initiate conversations or suggest opportunities to spend time with others. Except that it might take time to feel connected and feel like you're part of the group. I really like this piece about active. Like I was saying to you before, you really have to play an active role in navigating your wellness in general, but also navigating these experiences with loneliness and social isolation. You can be that person who can shift yourself out of that, and it doesn't have to be on your own. Except that you won't be everyone's friend, and that's okay. So you probably don't get along with everyone you meet. Some people may not get along with you, and that is okay. It's not a reflection of your value or your worth. This means you haven't met the right group or individuals yet, right? Who are those quality mirrors that can reflect back to us aspects of ourselves? We want to aim for healthy relationships as well. So healthy relationships are built upon respecting the needs of yourself and also the other person in the relationship. Relationships in which you can feel seen, heard, valued, and supported without judgment. Identify what is in the way. So is there anything that is standing between you and the relationships or activities you'd like to pursue? Think about what might be getting in the way or stopping you from engaging in social connections. And what can you do about it? What action can you take? You want to rebuild, build supportive relationships. If you have a helpful or supportive relationship with a family members or friends, think of ways you increase connections with them. Geography and other factors can definitely challenge our access to these connections. However, phone calls, video calls, email, or any other form of communication can help us stay connected. This might be something where we're having to compromise, right? Um, let's say I'm experiencing loneliness and I all the people that I connect with are back home in another country. The barrier for me in that sense might be, oh, I don't like to talk on a video call. It doesn't feel the same, right? Yes, that is the truth. And it can still provide you with something, right? Still can provide you with a bit of what you're needing, even if it isn't what you really want or the full gamut of what you want in that experience, right? You can start to build and take those little small pieces, those small bites that help you feel connected. And we want to find a way to take advantage of the time we'll be alone as well. So that solitude, time alone can maybe an opportunity for you to pursue a hobby, you might be able to learn a skill, get into a good book that you enjoy, listen to music, or connect with nature. If being alone is a time when unhelpful thinking takes over, consider talking with a mental health support as well, right? And not just a mental health support. This can be anyone you feel comfortable with having a conversation like that with. This can be a community member, this can be an elder, anyone that you feel comfortable with. And as we're beginning to close out here, I'm just putting up here some questions that we can use to reflect on our connected selves. So if we think about where am I reestablishing trust with myself and others, and where do I need to improve my trustworthiness? Why would that be helpful to explore, right? We need to be able to trust others, right? To feel that, to settle into a relationship, to feel that safety, that security. What are the core relationships to establish with, from, and who, for, and for? What's occupying the most of my time these days? What gives me energy and boosts my capacity right now, right? So what gives me the vitality to really be engaged in these relationships? What impacts do I hope to have on my connections and vice versa? So their impact on me. So again, that's going to be really subjective of an experience. But for myself, I think about what makes me feel joyful. I feel good. I feel like I don't have to fake the funk with, right? I can just really drop down, be my true self, be my weird self, and it is accepted and held. And to summarize, people's relationships and interactions with family, friends, coworkers, and community members can have and does have a major impact on our health and well-being. So it's imperative that we co-create and focus on helping in ourselves the social support that we need in the places that we live, we work, learn, and play, and know that we are worth it. Again, just take a moment for these professional resources if you are needing any support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kendall.